Have you ever had your mail mysteriously disappear? Imagine discovering it wasn't just lost, but stolen, right from your own mailbox by someone you trusted. Today, I'm going to share the unbelievable story of how HOA Karen stole my mail, and how the postal inspector set up a sting that led to her arrest. Stay tuned, because this story will shock you and might just make you rethink who you trust in your neighborhood. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story like this. The morning sun poured golden light over the quiet suburban street, where neatly trimmed lawns lined the sidewalks and identical mailboxes stood like sentinels outside each house. The air smelled faintly of fresh-cut grass and blooming roses as a soft breeze carried the distant hum of sprinklers watering the gardens. I stood in front of my mailbox, heart hammering in my chest, a growing knot of frustration tightening inside me. The small metal door swung open, revealing nothing but emptiness again. 5 times this week, I had come to check, hoping for a letter, a package, anything at all, but every single time my mailbox betrayed me, with silence. Where was my mail? It had started innocently enough, just a missing package here, a lost letter there, but now it was a pattern too deliberate to ignore. Last week, a birthday card from my sister had vanished, a card that held $100 tucked inside a note filled with love and good wishes. The sting of that loss felt sharp, like a punch to the gut, as if someone had reached into my life and stolen a piece of joy meant only for me. The neighborhood around me buzzed with a peaceful normality that made the theft all the more jarring. How could something so quiet and perfect hide such a betrayal? I glanced up the street, watching neighbors tend to their yards, waving greetings to familiar faces while keeping an eye out for anyone suspicious. My thoughts swirled with questions and doubts. Was it a stranger lurking in the shadows, a thief slipping in unseen, or something far more unsettling, someone close by, someone I trusted? The sharp click of heels on the pavement broke through my reverie. She appeared like clockwork every morning, a woman who could only be described as the neighborhood queen bee. Her name was Karen. She wore oversized sunglasses, even though the sun was not fully up, and carried a clipboard that seemed permanently attached to her hand. Her floral blouse was immaculate, her posture rigid, as if she carried the weight of the entire community on her shoulders. Karen was the president of the HOA, the self-appointed guardian of neighborhood rules and appearances. She spoke with a sweetness that felt forced, a practiced charm that barely masked the sharp edge beneath. Karen's eyes swept over me briefly, a smile that didn't reach her eyes tugging at her lips. "Still worried about your missing mail, aren't you?" she said, in a tone dripping with faux concern. "I assure you we have everything under control. Porch pirates have been a problem in other neighborhoods, but not here. You just need to be patient." Her words fell flat. I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. "I know it's not porch. Pirates. Karen, I'm telling you, the mail is disappearing after it's delivered, and the mailbox is locked." My voice was firm, but I could hear the desperation leaking through. Karen chuckled lightly, shaking her head, as if humoring a child. "Maybe you should check if it was delivered to a neighbor's house by mistake. You know how forgetful people can be. Sometimes things turn up where you least expect them." Her smug dismissal felt like a slap. I clenched my fists, but forced myself to stay calm. This was just the beginning. I needed answers, and Karen was the only person in this neighborhood with any real influence. Maybe she could help if she took me seriously. Maybe over the next few days I tried everything to catch the thief. I installed a small camera hidden behind a flower pot near the mailbox, hoping to capture whoever was stealing my mail. But each morning the camera was mysteriously offline, dead, as if someone had cut the power or smashed the lens. Frustration turned to suspicion, and suspicion into anger. I confronted Karen again this time at the monthly HOA meeting, where the room buzzed with chatter, and the smell of stale coffee filled the air. She stood at the podium commanding attention, her voice sharp and practiced. When I raised the issue of my missing mail, she smiled that same condescending smile. You need to focus on more important matters than your petty complaints. The HOA has rules and regulations that apply to everyone, including how mailboxes should be maintained. Without warning, she pointed at my mailbox and declared it too worn and unsightly, violating the community standards. The crowd murmured their agreement as if this small infraction somehow justified ignoring my concerns. The sting of being dismissed so publicly was more than I could bear. I realized then that Karen wasn't just indifferent, she was actively hostile. Her role as HOA president gave her power, and she wielded it with a cruel precision. The mail theft was no longer just a personal loss, but a battle against an arrogant woman who seemed to enjoy making others suffer. Days later, another blow landed when a government letter failed to arrive. It was an important notice about my taxes, a letter that required immediate attention. I called the IRS, who confirmed they had sent it weeks ago, but there was no record of delivery on my end. Fear and panic settled in like a heavy fog. This was no longer a nuisance. This was serious. I decided to take matters into my own hands, driving to the post office to report the issue. The scent of paper and ink mixed with the bustle of postal workers was a strange comfort. At the counter stood a man with a sharp gaze and an air of authority. Mr. Langford, a postal inspector, who listened intently as I explained my situation. He nodded slowly, saying, "Mail theft is a federal crime. Serious business. And it sounds like you might have a case here. If you cooperate, I can arrange a sting operation to catch the culprit." Hope sparked in me for the first time in weeks. Maybe this was the moment when justice would finally catch up with Karen, the woman who stole not just my mail, but my peace of mind. As I left the post office, I felt the weight of what lay ahead, but for the first time, a spark of determination flared bright inside me. This was just the beginning, and I was ready to fight back. The mailbox stood silent once more, but now it held a promise that no one could steal what was rightfully mine without consequences. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the street as I took a deep breath and prepared for what was to come. This was more than mail, it was about trust, respect, and finally reclaiming my life from the grasp of a woman who thought she could get away with anything. And so, the stage was set for a battle that would change everything. But the fight was far from over. Every morning I woke up with the same gnawing anxiety, the weight of suspicion pressing down on me like a heavy fog. The idea that someone in my own neighborhood was rifling through my private mail filled me with an anger I could barely contain. I had done everything I could think of, short of confronting the thief head-on, but so far every lead ended in dead ends and frustration. The camera was useless, and Karen's dismissive smirks at HOA meetings made it clear she had no intention of helping. It was a quiet Thursday when the first real breakthrough came. I had spent the afternoon nervously pacing my living room when my phone buzzed with an unexpected message. It was from the postal inspector, Mr. Langford. He wrote simply, "We are ready to move forward with the sting. Are you prepared?" I stared at the screen, heart pounding a mix of fear and hope flooding my chest. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for a chance to catch the thief red-handed and finally clear my name from the whispers I knew Karen had probably started behind my back. I typed back, "Yes, whatever it takes." The plan was simple, yet nerve-wracking. The inspector explained they would set up a hidden camera inside my mailbox, rigged with sensors, to alert them the instant it was opened. They would place specially marked letters that could be traced if stolen. And most importantly, they would have officers disguised as delivery workers staking out the street waiting for the thief to make their move. That evening, I barely slept, my mind racing through every possible scenario. What if Karen really was the culprit? What would she do if caught? Would she deny everything, or try to turn the blame around on me? I didn't know what to expect, but I knew one thing. This was the only way to take back control. The next morning dawned, bright and clear, with a sky so blue it almost hurt to look at. I stood by my mailbox, heart hammering as the first mail truck pulled up, the hum of the engine mingling with the chirping of birds. I watched the driver carefully slip the marked letters inside and disappear down the street. Hours passed in agonizing stillness, the neighborhood carrying on as if nothing was wrong. I could feel the eyes of neighbors peering from windows and porches as rumors started to swirl quietly. The paranoia thickened the air like smoke. Then suddenly, the mailbox door creaked. Open, a shadowy figure slipping in quick as a fox. My breath caught in my throat as I recognized the unmistakable silhouette of Karen. Her sunglasses were gone, and her expression was tense, eyes darting nervously as she grabbed the letters and stuffed them into a bag. The sting was in motion, and the trap was sprung. Almost instantly, the disguised officers stepped out from behind bushes and cars converging on Karen like hawks on prey. She stumbled back, startled, her face draining of color. For a moment, she tried to pretend innocence. Her hands raised in a pleading gesture, but the evidence was damning, the stolen mail marked unmistakably in her bag. The tension in the air was electric. Neighbors gathered slowly, forming a tight circle of spectators, their murmurs growing louder with every passing second. Karen's arrogance, that once seemed unshakable, now shattered under the weight of reality. One officer approached her calmly, explaining the charges: mail theft, a federal offense punishable by heavy fines and possible jail time. Karen's lips quivered, her breath coming in shallow gasps as the cuffs clicked shut around her wrists. As they led her away, she shot me a look filled with pure venom, a silent promise that this was not the end. But I stood tall, watching her go, feeling a wave of relief crash over me. The fight had been long and painful, but justice was finally within reach. The neighborhood seemed to hold its breath as whispers of the arrest spread quickly. Some neighbors expressed shock, others whispered about Karen's long history of manipulation and control. The power dynamics in the community had shifted, and the fragile peace was forever altered. Even though Karen was caught, the battle was far from over. There were still questions about how deep the deception ran and what other secrets might come to light. But for now, I allowed myself a moment to savor the victory, to feel the weight lift from my shoulders, and to know that sometimes standing up for yourself meant calling in reinforcements and playing a smarter game. With Karen behind bars, the mailbox, that once symbolized loss and betrayal, now stood as a beacon of hope, a reminder that even the most entitled could be brought down. And I knew that the real story was just beginning. The days after Karen's arrest unfolded with a strange mix of relief and lingering tension. The neighborhood that had once seemed so quiet now buzzed with whispers and sideways glances, as if the very ground beneath us had shifted. For me, the battle was far from over. Even though Karen was behind bars, the wounds she left were deep, and the scars of betrayal hard to forget. The morning after the arrest, I stood on my porch watching neighbors pass by exchanging hushed conversations. Some nodded in sympathy, others avoided eye contact as if unsure what to say. The HOA meetings that used to be routine became charged with an undercurrent of unease. Without Karen's iron grip, the community felt exposed, vulnerable, and uncertain. At the post office, Mr. Langford met me with a grave look. "The case is stronger than we thought, but Karen isn't the only one we're investigating. There are signs of a larger scheme, a network of theft that could involve others in the neighborhood." His words sent a chill down my spine. What had started as a personal vendetta had spiraled into something far bigger and more dangerous. I returned home determined to dig deeper. I began talking to neighbors, quietly probing for information, careful not to raise suspicion. Some were hesitant, others eager to share stories of strange happenings. Mail disappearing, late-night footsteps by mailboxes. The picture that emerged was unsettling, a tangled web of lies, deception, and fear that Karen had woven to keep control. The more I learned, the more I realized how much power Karen had abused. She had used her position to silence dissent, intimidate neighbors, and cover up her crimes. Her charm and authority had been a mask for manipulation and cruelty. But now, with her removed, the truth had a chance to surface, no matter how ugly it might be. One evening, as I sifted through messages on my phone, a new alert came through from Mr. Langford. "We have obtained permission to search Karen's home. Expect surprises." My heart raced. What secrets would be uncovered behind the pristine facade she maintained for years? What evidence lay hidden in plain sight? The search revealed a trove of stolen mail, not just from me, but dozens of neighbors. Bills, credit card offers, personal letters, all piled in a hidden closet behind a false wall. There were forged signatures, falsified documents, and a ledger listing bribes and favors. The scope of her operation was staggering. News spread fast. The neighbors who once feared her now gawked in disbelief as the truth spilled into daylight. Karen's carefully curated image crumbled brick by brick, exposing the rot beneath. The HOA board scrambled to regain control, promising reforms, transparency, and accountability. But the damage was done. Trust had been broken, and healing would take time. Despite the chaos, a strange sense of justice settled over me. The battle had turned from a fight for my mail into a crusade against corruption and abuse of power. I found strength in the unexpected, allies who emerged, neighbors banding together, determined to rebuild what Karen had torn apart. Yet even as the community rallied, there was a lingering shadow. Karen's venomous glare from the courtroom as she faced charges reminded me that she was not defeated in spirit, only in circumstance. Her threats hung in the air, a promise of retaliation that kept me vigilant. I knew this fight was no longer just mine, but a stand for everyone who had suffered under her reign. The mailbox that once symbolized loss had become a beacon of resistance and hope. But the story was far from over. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the neighborhood, I felt a steely resolve harden inside me. This was a turning point, a moment when the quiet suburban street became the battleground for truth, justice, and the fight against darkness hidden behind a smile. And as the night deepened, I prepared for whatever came next, knowing that sometimes the greatest battles were fought not with fists, but with courage and unyielding will. The final days of the saga unfolded like a tightly wound coil ready to snap. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Neighbors packed the benches, their faces a mixture of curiosity, anger, and hope. I sat near the front, gripping the edge of my seat, as the prosecution laid bare the depths of Karen's deceit. Her smirks and sideways glances had vanished, replaced by a pale mask of anxiety and barely concealed fury. The woman who had once ruled the neighborhood with an iron fist was now a defendant facing the full weight of justice. The evidence was overwhelming. The stolen mail, the forged signatures, the ledger filled with bribes, all painted a damning portrait of a woman who had abused power for personal gain. Witness after witness recounted tales of manipulation, intimidation, and betrayal. Each testimony chipped away at the fortress Karen had built around herself, revealing the truth in stark relief. But the climax came unexpectedly during the cross-examination, when the lead prosecutor produced a video recorded by the Postal inspector hidden camera. It showed Karen sneaking to my mailbox in the bright daylight, her face contorted with greed and fear as she rifled through letters, stuffing them into a bag. The courtroom gasped. The image was undeniable proof of her guilt, and it shattered whatever illusions remained in the room. Karen's defense faltered. Her words grew frantic as she tried to spin a story of misunderstanding and desperation, but the damage was done. The jury's expressions hardened, and the judge's gaze bore into her with a silent promise of judgment. The tension in the room was palpable, a collective exhale held in suspense, waiting for the verdict that would seal Karen's fate. When the foreman finally stood to deliver the verdict, the silence was deafening. "We find the defendant guilty as charged." The words struck like thunder. Karen's face twisted in disbelief before crumpling into tears, the mask of arrogance replaced by raw defeat. She was led away in handcuffs, her threats reduced to hollow echoes. Outside the courthouse, the crowd erupted in a mixture of cheers and stunned silence. Neighbors approached me shaking hands, offering congratulations and apologies for turning a blind eye. The power that Karen wielded was broken, and a new chapter for the community had begun. Yet even in victory, there was a sense of reflection. The EB ordeal had changed me. I realized that standing up to injustice required more than anger. It demanded resilience, patience, and the courage to fight smart. The mailbox that had once been a symbol of fear had become a monument to perseverance and truth. Weeks later, as I walked through the neighborhood, the air felt different, lighter. People greeted me with genuine smiles, and conversations flowed without fear or suspicion. The HOA meetings now focused on rebuilding trust, creating transparency, and ensuring no one could wield power unchecked again. One afternoon, I caught sight of a familiar figure lingering near the park. Karen was back, her presence, like a shadow from the past, but this time she was diminished, no longer a queen, but a cautionary tale whispered among neighbors. I met her gaze and smiled quietly, knowing that justice had been served, and the story of her fall would be told for years to come. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of orange and pink, I stood by my mailbox, feeling the cool breeze against my skin. The journey had been long and fraught with pain, but it had ended in triumph. The mail that once vanished now arrived safely, and the community breathed freely again. With a wry smile, I thought to myself, some thieves don't just steal mail, they steal peace. But sometimes, the smallest battles lead to the greatest victories. And with that, the story closed, not with a whisper, but a roar of justice echoing through the quiet streets, a testament to the power of courage and the unbreakable spirit of a neighborhood united.